Cybersecurity is a popular topic these days. Ransomware attacks are more prevalent than ever, and especially with operational environments. Most recently, the week before the Super Bowl, we heard about a waste treatment plant being compromised where somebody tried to hack in and raise the chemical levels in the waste treatment plant. What we'd like to understand is how Fortinet can prevent and mitigate the damage to these systems that are vulnerable to attack, and how do we protect these legacy operating systems?
You need to start thinking about what are the best practices and how do you employ those. So you start with visibility and making sure that you understand everything that's connected to the environment. The first logical step, because you can't protect what you can't see, starts with gaining that visibility. From that point, you can then turn your attention to control. And by that, I mean, insisting on earned trust. With visibility, you might say, well, naturally, I'm going to be able to trust the asset. But no, you have to assume that you're enforcing some sort of role-based access control. So insisting on the use of multi-factor authentication and tokens. A control strategy says, I'm going to segment my architecture so that, well, you can control or access and do the job I expect you to do. It limits you to behave in that context and not allow you to go off and explore. Why is that important? Because if your credentials were somehow mishandled or lost, they fall into the hands of a bad actor, they gain access, the first thing they're going to do when they get on target is seek to move, right? It's, all right, I've gained my access, now I'm going to start to move vertically or horizontally within the environment, and then I'm going to start to run probably a long campaign of reconnaissance. We've seen that, in the latter part of 2020, many heard about the supply chain related attacks, SolarWinds, perfect example of that, long-term reconnaissance. And then a step beyond that is, now that I've segmented, is to understand your behavior again while you're on target so that I can be doing analysis and up chain reporting. So if I have back-end intelligence services, FortiGuard Labs is a great example of that, I can be doing industrial related research and analysis of what's happening behaviorally, both on-prem and off, building equity and then expanding my knowledge and keeping my infrastructure aware of all of the kinds of things that are going on, both legacy as well as current. So that's really important. And I think it's even more important when you realize that most of operational technology is comprised of hardware and software. That's a lot of legacy, not uncommon to encounter an operating system that might be 20 or 30 years old. XP is not a foreign term in an OS that you'll find in OT. And so what you put out there, and I think part of the solution strategy has to afford backwards compatibility. And of course, we can do that as well. That allows us then to be smart about how we automate the awareness and can provide that level of confidence, right, to the OT system owner that they understand behaviorally what's happening at any moment in time.
One of the programs that we're working with Fortinet right now is the Cyber Threat Assessment Program. For our customers, this is a free program initiated from Fortinet that in which Fortinet will send a firewall to a customer location and collect data over the course of, let's say, a week. As a result of that data collection, they'll then provide a report of the types of threats and things that their devices found within the network. Could you explain a little bit about the program?
Yeah, the beauty is, right, it's no cost, right? It allows you to do what I'll call discovery, right? If your network's grown organically, which it probably has, the chances are you're trying to put your finger on, what do we look like? How are we connected? What's out there? I need to make sure that I can ascertain and be confident of what's in my inventory at any moment in time. So that discovery moment is an important one. It allows you to recognize, okay, what's my level of risk that I'm taking today? What's the landscape look like, in terms of proportion, and where do I start in terms of applying the right assets? Because I think, and it's particularly important for OT, whatever you choose to pursue from a solution point of view has got to scale long-term. You can't just be thinking about right now. You got to be thinking about what you're going to look like 2-5 years from now, because OT systems aren't into big time change. They want to make a smart investment and then see the return on that for 15, 20, even 30 years. And I think that's one of the benefits here of the ecosystem approach is you continue to grow the solution, but you're not ripping it out. You just continue to evolve and grow the capacity. And that's equally important because, as we were talking about earlier, you've got a growth in the attack surface that's enormous with all the enabled devices. And when you start to think about how extensible that framework looks like, you say, wow, I've got a big problem. So starting with a CTAP gives you that great ability to leverage and employ capabilities that are friendly. But then when you move beyond having that data, you have to think what my next steps need to look like, have to take advantage of that information, that intelligence. And that's, again, where you come back to answering the right questions. What's the first step that I take that's going to logically connect into what looks like a journey? And I always want to insist that you may have some on-site capability today that helps you to take those right steps, as opposed to believing that you've got to make a hard right turn and start over.
One of the things that can be complex is when you have multiple Fortinet appliances or devices in your network, how do you essentially manage all the cybersecurity solutions within your ecosystem?
The security fabric, which of course is, has our next generation firewall at the hub, has functions like the FortiManager and FortiAnalyzer as part of the entire orchestrated response. So if you're talking about, let's just talk about the FortiManager for just a second. If we're talking about automation-driven centralized management, this lets me now think about how to solve that problem, but be focused on things like orchestration, automation, and optimized visibility. Man, that's really important when you realize you're constantly interrogating and doing requirements management. Efficiency here is key. So you need to have a one place to go. You use that, you hear the term single pane of glass thrown around a lot, but it really is connecting in all of these services that are happening and having a place where you can view it and visualize what's happening. Conversely, FortiAnalyzer, which is another component in our security fabric architecture, allows you then to have security-driven analytics and log management. So you got to have a place where all that's being captured too. So you're doing end-to-end visibility, advanced threat detection, workflow and compliance reporting, and all that information is being shared and drawn together. The true value of an ecosystem, right, is that it's well informed and the information is flowing. Equally important in these conversations is understanding how our partner products have been designed API-wise to fit in. I'm going to be talking to a Canadian energy activity tomorrow, and it's important for me to know that they have a disposition with a partner where they're already using a technology alliance partner of ours to do switching, to do network access control, and we already have the API designed in. So that's terrific because they don't have to change a thing. It's already a part of what can be harnessed into that ecosystem and become a part of their solution. So they don't have to move off of the direction that they've already taken. It doesn't challenge any of the investment they've already made.
What I like most about the FortiManager and FortiAnalyzer is it enables a single point of access to really manage your security ecosystem.
Exactly.
And what's great about that is you don't have to log into each individual device to get access to the logs, the information, the configurations. You can log into either an individual compliance or in much larger scale, a virtualized machine of these appliances that really enable, central access to your security. It amazes me these days how many, medium and larger size customers are still managing security as islands of security rather than as an ecosystem or centralized management.
Yeah, it comes back to a problem you mentioned before. And if you fall into that islands mode, right, the natural curiosity or concern should be, how much time are you losing, right? If I can't have a coordinated response that's happening at the speed of business, I will lose. It's a guarantee. The adversary is way too good. They're going to be too smart to move, and I can't keep up with them.
The other thing I'll point out is that people don't realize that you can automate security. Right, so that your appliances and devices can actually take corrective action if they come in contact with a threat or something that is out of the ordinary. So you can be given an alert that something's happened, and it can shut down a certain level or attack that you may not have any awareness of, right? And it's one of the critical things as we get into the next generation of security. the automation of that security becomes very important as well.
We're careful too when we work with the OT client to not be overzealous in that fact, to have them be able to design the level at which they're comfortable in giving that automated control, right? Because ultimately there are some features and functions that they want to be able to give the go or no go, but they have access again to that single pane front end to make those intelligent decisions at the speed of business. And while you might say, well, the human factor is in there a little bit, that's the decision they've made. They don't want to give up the con completely, because there may be conditions that require a change to happen that aren't a part of the policy yet. And it gives them at least the agility to deal with that on their own terms, but make a smart decision and continue to evolve, right? Because the policy can evolve. It can be a part of a new rule that didn't exist before. So I think that's important, to be agile as you synthesize and grow your solution.
You know, as industrial organizations develop their own security programs, are there specific cybersecurity frameworks that offer guidance?
I like the NIST cybersecurity framework. It's easy to access. You can do research on it, but I love the way it breaks down the problem. IE 62443 kind of does that too. There are different variations on these on instructions and compliance products that do it as well. But the NIST cybersecurity framework kind of breaks it down into 5 key areas. So you have identification, you have protection, detection, response and recovery, and each of those has sub-elements. So you can sort of peel it back or break it down and understand what are those elements, where are you with respect to accommodating those requirements. And then it allows you to address where your gaps are. Where are your pain points? What are the things you need to do to make sure that you're being comprehensive in your strategy? And it yields a 24/7 continuous threat assessment, which is obviously where you want to be. You know, you're not looking to ever let your guard down, but it says, if you're doing all of these things, you now have the level of situational awareness that would be ideal. And you're able to understand what's changing out there. I mentioned before, and I think it bears a revisit, our adversaries very committed to disruption today. Their rationale or their commitment is, very based on profit. It's motivated by greed, whether it's just simple extortion, more likely industrial espionage, which I mentioned before, or even industrial sabotage. We have to be thinking on all those dimensions, because the capacity of them to affect these campaigns is what brings great pain to the OT system owner. And we have to worry about not just the intellectual property, but our ability to protect the consumer, right? Because there's 2 edges to this. It's protecting our workforce, it's protecting the consumer, but also realizing that the core benefit is of cyber resilience is not being bulletproof, but making my target harder to compromise to the extent that the adversary is going to shop someplace else. I think that's an important thought as you think about your way forward and understanding where you are compared to the rest of your competition, and actually the rest of the global community out there. Because when we're talking about OT, we're really talking about services that all of our citizens depend on. There's a lot at stake here, Chris, and it's important to raise that bar, because our citizens around the globe deserve that and they expect it. It just doesn't take much, right, to cause a problem. We're aware of that today, and I think we're positioning and moving forward smartly to make it a lot harder for adversaries to succeed.